Hi there, James here. Hope you're having a good day and welcome to another one of my video lessons. Now, if you've been following my music theory lessons for guitarists series, which I've been publishing on YouTube, you might have seen a few weeks ago I published a lesson on keys and chord progressions. And I had a really great question from a viewer, which was, how come you get minor chords in major keys? He said, I would have thought that all the chords in any major key would be major because we're talking about major keys. So that's what I want to cover in this lesson. There's a really good reason why we get minor chords in major keys, and I'm going to explain to you exactly how this works. So stay tuned because this is something which confuses a lot of players. Now, if you want to nail most of the music theory you'll ever need to know and you haven't grabbed a copy of my book already, here it is, Noble Music Theory for Guitarists. It is literally probably the easiest way to learn most of the music theory you will ever need to know. It covers keys, triads, intervals, important scales, chord sequences, all this stuff. Probably the easiest way to learn most of the important music theory guitar players need to know. So check it out if you haven't already. There is a link under this video and you can click through and see what readers are saying about it, how it's helped them out, and all that kind of good stuff. So check out Noble Music Theory for Guitarists if you haven't grabbed your copy already. But anyway, enough of that, and onward to today's lesson. Now, let's have a brief recap on what a key is. Now, if you know this already, stick with me because it's just going to take a very short amount of time. But we said that a key can be thought of as a set of 7 chords which go with a certain major scale. For example, the chords in the key of G will go with the notes in the G major scale. And when I say go, I mean they will fit together. We could play a set of chords in the key of G major and the G major scale, the notes in the G major scale will fit over it if we're composing melodies or want to play a solo, that kind of thing. Now what I've done here is I've written out the chords in the key of C. We've got C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, and B diminished. Now, this is what the guy who asked me the question wanted to know. He said, well, there's 7 chords, but only 3 of them are actually major, yet we're in a major key. So where do these other chords come from, these minor chords and this diminished chord? So we're going to cover that in just a moment. But first of all, we need to remember this very important rule, which was that we numbered our chords numbers 1 to 7. And normally we do this using Roman numerals. You can see I've done this along the top here. And the rule for a major key is that the first chord is always major, the second and third chord are both minor, the fourth and the fifth chord are major, the sixth chord is minor, and the seventh is diminished. Okay, so it's major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished. Now, I would recommend, if you don't know that formula, that you memorize it briefly because it's really helpful in working out the chords in different major keys. Now, as I said in my other videos, and I'll say it again in this one, I don't want you to think that you can't use any other chords at all in there, because you can. But we're talking very basic sort of nuts and bolts stuff here just to help it all make sense. Okay, so we've got that formula: major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished. So where do these minor chords come from? Well, let's have a little recap using our C major scale on where these triads come from. So if I write out the notes in the C major scale, we've got C, D, E, F, G, A, and B, you'll remember that what we did is we stacked sets of 3 notes. So we started on the C, and we hopped over the next note and landed on the next one. And then we did that again. So that gave us C, E, and G. Then we started on the D note, the second note in the scale, and we did the same thing. We hopped over E, landed on F, hopped over F, landed on A, and that gave us our second triad. So far we've got 2 triads. We've got C, E, G, and we've got D, F, and A. Now I go through all of these in the other key video, but we don't need to do the whole thing now. This is enough for us to explain the subject of this lesson. So that's how we get the triads. We start on each note and we keep doing that until we've done it on every note in the scale. That gives us our 7 triads. Okay, now let's look at these 2 triads here, the first 2, C, E, G, and D, F, and A. And before we get into why they're major or why they're minor, we need to have a bit of a reminder about what a major triad actually is. Now, a major triad is the first, third, and the 5th note from a major scale. So let's look at the first one here. Here's our C major scale. We can see that this triad here, which we've got, C, E, and G, is indeed the first note in the C major scale, the third note in the major scale, and the fifth note in the C major scale. So because it's the first or the root, the third and the fifth note in the C major scale, that is why it is a C major triad. Okay, so we would call that one C, or maybe C major. Now, let's look at this next one, because people say, well, surely this one, D, F, A, that must also be major. It's not. Let's look at why. Now, you'll remember that I just said a major triad is the first, third, and fifth note of a major scale. So to decide and see what kind of chord this D triad is, D, F, and A, we don't want to look at the C major scale. We need to look at the D major scale. We need to look at the D major scale and say, are these notes the first note, the third note, and the fifth note in the D major scale or not? So let's find out. So the notes in the D major scale are D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, and C sharp. So let's look at what a D major triad would be. It would be if we started on the first note in the D major scale and we hopped over the next note, which is E, we'd land on the F sharp, hop again, we land on A. So we could say, well, the notes in the D major triad would be D, F sharp, and A, because F sharp is the third note in the D major scale. I hope that makes sense. So D, F sharp, and A are the notes in a D major triad. Now, you might have noticed already, that is not what we've got here. Let's talk about what a minor triad is. A minor triad is when we take the third of the triad, or the second note that we've added to it, and we flatten it. Now, let's look at this D triad. D, F sharp, and A is a major triad. If we flatten this middle note, the F sharp, it drops down to F and it becomes a minor triad. So a minor triad would be D, F, and A. That flattened third, F sharp, has moved down a fret or down a semitone to F. And that is exactly what we've got here. We've got D, F, and A, and they are the notes in a D minor triad, okay? So that is how we know that this chord is D minor. Now let's look at what happens with the rest of the triads. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but let's look at the E one. So our E triad coming from the C major scale would be E, G, and B. And you know what? When we compare that to the E major scale, we see that the G in the E major scale is G sharp. Again, we've got this G note here, which is a flattened third. So we're not getting the formula for a major triad when we start and stack on the second and third note. Instead we get a minor triad. And that's why. It's just because the F sharp isn't in the C major scale. So the note that makes this D triad major is not in the C major scale at all. So this is why it becomes a minor. Okay, I've just grabbed a guitar so I can show you how this works in practice. Let's have a look at a C major scale using open strings, and then we can start to see how these notes work. So here's a C major scale using open strings, played down around the sort of open and first fret. You don't need to learn this so much, it's more just going to demonstrate this point. So here's the notes in the scale. So I'm playing the third fret on the A string, open D string, second and third fret on the D string, open G string, open B, and then the second fret on the G string, open B string, first to third fret, and open high E string, first to third fret. So let's have a look at a D major chord. Now I'm sure you will know this basic D major chord down here around the open position. Now let's look at a D minor chord, which is this one. You just simply move this second fret on the high E string, moves down to the first fret. Now look at both those chords. You can see that the D minor chord, the note on the high E string fits with our C major scale, and the D major one there at the second fret is not in the major scale. So this is why. It's because the notes in the D minor chord are in the C major scale. The notes in the D major chord are not. Now if we think about an E minor chord as well. So here's an E minor chord, which everyone probably knows. Now we have the open G string note. That note is in the scale shape that I just showed you. There it is, okay? And all the other notes are also in that scale shape, all those open strings. When we change that to E major, the first finger goes onto the G string at the first fret. And again, that note is not in the C major scale. So this is why these chords are major or minor or diminished. It's because when we start them on that particular note, they're the notes that are in the C major scale. The notes that would make them a different kind of chord aren't in there. So this is why we get some minor chords and some diminished chords, as well as some major chords, when we put these chords together into families. Now, I explain this in more depth in my book, Noble Music for Theory. Do check out that out. It's probably the cheapest, most affordable way to get your music theory together. It's really helping thousands of guitar players around the world. So do check it out if you haven't already. But I hope this video has made a lot of sense. And just a brief reminder of what you're going to do with this kind of stuff. You can take these chords from any of these keys and you can put them into chord sequences. You can turn them into songs and things. So if you had a couple of chords from the key of C here, C, D minor, E minor, F, G, and so on, and you came up with something which went C, G, A minor, you might think, what other chords would work with that? And if you can figure out that those chords are in the key of C, you've then got these other chords to choose from. So this is really helpful when it comes to piecing chord sequences together, writing songs, working out other people's songs, understanding keys is a really big deal. I really would suggest you go back, watch my other key videos, make sure that everything here makes sense. But I hope this video has helped to sort of answer this question, which you may have had, why we've got these other kinds of chords in a major key. So thanks a lot for watching. Make sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, because I'm publishing lessons like this and lick lessons every week. Check out the book and look out for another music theory lesson coming from me very soon. So have a great day, and I'll catch you next time.